Hey, how you doing? Thanks for dropping by and checking out this video. My name is Mike Precious. I'm a Canadian-based designer, and today I want to talk to you about baseline grids and a really simple, effective way to implement a baseline grid into your Photoshop workflow. Two reasons why I like using baseline grids. Number one would be for typesetting, and number two for creating and maintaining visual consistency. I find if you take a baseline grid and you combine that with a standard vertical y-axis based grid, it really presents a very powerful combination when you get into design compositing. So let's jump in here. We're going to look at a couple examples. New York Times would be the first one. Here's an example of a site, information portal, very rich in content. Do they have a baseline grid running the entire span of the page? No. Is it possible to? Maybe mathematically speaking, maybe. But I think if you look within the compartments of information on the page, there's obviously consistent styles that traverse from column to column in certain instances, but it can be very tricky to impose a global baseline on this page or across the site, given that the content just changes so rapidly, styles change within each column. So you'll see here with these guides, there's just really, it's tough to find a spot where there could be a baseline emerging. So that's an example where a baseline implementation can be a little bit more hairy, but you look at a more simplified site. We'll take Blake Allen. He's an industry peer designer. This is his self-promotion site. You'll notice, we'll take those guides away for a second. It's a very sparse, simple site. I love it. Swiss design, hard left, jagged, ragged right. It's working pretty good, but there's quite a bit of a dependency on the grid there. And you can see that not only has he leaned on that vertical grid system, he's also leaned onto a baseline grid to make sure everything's looking compartmentalized, tight, and consistent right across the board. So that's an example where baseline grid can be implemented very liberally and can play a major role in keeping that design together. So let's jump into an example here. This is a site that I recently collaborated on with Pat Dryberg, a fellow designer. And we've got our set of Photoshop generated guides, and then we also have our grid system at our disposal. But what about our baseline grid? Like what if we're compositing, we want to be moving stuff around, and we're not sure where we want everything to end up yet? Can we have a baseline grid that's extensible, that can grow, that can shrink, that can be coarse, that can be fine, based on our needs? Well, I think I found out a pretty good method that can help you create a baseline grid that's extensible. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by creating a new layer, and we're going to call that baseline grid. And now what we're going to do is we're going to fill that layer. We just hit Alt Delete on a Mac, and then what we're going to do is we're going to pull that fill out. And now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new layer, or not a new layer, a new document. So we just hit Command N. We're going to make that 6 by 6 pixels. We're going to zoom all the way in here, and then we're going to grab the marquee tool, and we are going to create a 1 pixel line across there. We're going to make that red. Red's usually a good color for a baseline, and we hit Alt Delete to fill that, and then Command D to deselect. And here's the important part. We go up to the Edit menu, and then we select Define Pattern. And then we want to make sure that we name this pattern appropriately. This is really going to help us out later on to make sure that we're identifying the proper baseline for our needs. So click OK on that. So we have our pattern defined. Now we go back to our working document here. We're going to double click on that baseline grid layer. We're going to click on Pattern Overlay. And then we're going to grab this flyout menu, and we're going to scroll right to the bottom. And you'll see here with the tooltip that pops up that we've got our 6 pixel baseline pattern right here. So we're going to click on that, and boom, we've got ourselves a 6 pixel baseline pattern. So we're just going to jump out of this menu here. Now what you want to do, if you've ever used a baseline grid or any form of a grid within Photoshop that's not proprietary to Photoshop, like the guide system or the grid system, you want to lock that puppy down. You want to keep that as a layer on top of everything else in your Photoshop document. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump in here, and of course with a baseline grid you use it for all your regular x-axis needs. So for example here we can adjust this around, we can move this up to sit on the baseline properly. So that's your application of the baseline. Now that's at 6 pixels. But what if we want something a little bit finer or a little bit more coarse? Well, it's as simple as going back into your document here and making it larger. If you want a 10 pixel baseline, you just make your canvas size 10 pixels, and then you take your handy line here, you extend that out the full 10 pixels at the bottom of the document, and then you just define it as a pattern. And then you just jump back in to your layout document, and it's as simple as going to the pattern overlay palette and selecting which one you want. Now I've actually gone ahead here and I've created a number of baseline numbers that range from 2 up to I believe 30, and it's great because if you want something that's more fine for detail work, you've got that right there. If you want something more coarse for if you're just wireframing, you've got that there too. And the beauty in all of this is you're not taxing the Photoshop rendering engine. You can quickly and easily change right through the array of baseline options right here, and you're not stuck having to drag guides around one by one to get things lined up. Everything is just right there, locked down, and you can change it up really quick and easy. So guys, it's just one little simple tip here. I hope it helps you out with your next project. Really quite straightforward. It works great with the standard vertical grid system. Good luck. Thanks a lot for watching. Take care.